It, in fact, did not pay off. Raise your hand if you're surprised. I kind of am because, it's still taking some getting used to seeing some form of repercussions and some resemblance of justice actually happen. It's still taking some getting used to. I'm not gonna get used to it because a lot of it isn't really justice, it's just a show. So, anyway, credit where credit is due. VCU did respond pretty quickly, and something like 12 hours after Libs of TikTok posted the original article, they placed her on administrative leave while they conducted their investigation, to which was also met with outrage. And I gotta say, you guys gotta remember due process. Everybody deserves a fair trial and due process in any capacity. We gotta remember to not stoop down to their level and try to instill mob justice or collective punishment. You gotta let things play out sometimes, especially when it comes to people having a fair trial and an investigation. A case could be made that maybe she wouldn't have been fired had there not been any outrage about the administrative leave, and people moved on after she was placed on leave and just moved on to the next thing and forgot about it. Who knows? Maybe. But in any case, she was fired and will probably end up losing her license like many of the others here in this article posted by Libs of TikTok. Now, I'm not one to celebrate someone losing their job and ruining their career or their life, but it's kind of one of those you make your bed, gotta lay in it situations, especially if you're dumb enough to post those type of things in the public view, especially in healthcare or some form of civil servant where all your information is public and your license number and where you practice, and you have an oath that you were sworn to uphold. When you do things like that, you're a special kind of stupid. Moving on. Libs of TikTok posted this article Friday evening, I believe. And some of you may find these sorts of things shocking or shockingly atrocious, the things that they said, rather. I, for one, do not, and I'm sure many of you do not, especially when you live in a state like I do, where the Attorney General openly wished death upon his political opponent's children, and to which no repercussion was had, which I don't know what, if any, could be, but it was also still elected. Imagine that. And especially when the elected governor, runs on an entire campaign about affordability and this and that, and then as soon as she's elected, wants to double, if not triple, taxes, grab guns, of course, all the scary assault weapons. And not only that, take it a step further and make everyone who does own guns, a criminal. And not only that, make it so if your gun is stolen, you're a criminal. Blame you, blame the victims of theft, blame the gun manufacturers for what people do with guns. We've reached an entirely new level of this clown show. It's all very fascinating to watch at this point, and that's really all you can do is watch and study it. And that's really what I do. I'm just so fascinated by how things are playing out, despite the abundance of cautionary tales and warnings that were issued to us for, decades, centuries, millennia about these sorts of things. It's almost like there's, only a few set methods, SOPs, best practices, whatever you want to call them, to how you destabilize, demoralize, and overthrow a nation. It's almost like they told us exactly how they were going to do it and then did that. In times like these, you really got to admire the left. Sure, they're backed and they're enabled and, whatnot, and they're useful idiots and they say some of the dumbest things you've ever heard or maybe never heard, but they're not all talk. At least they're not all talk. They're actively fighting for what they believe in. They're actively attacking the opposition. I'm not saying I agree with it, many of the methods and the things they do, but they're fighting for what they believe in fearlessly, despite the consequences. Again, and a lot of that has to do with the lack thereof of consequences and justice being served, and judges being super lenient on these people, sure, but they're still taking action. Now, what is the right doing? They still want to have civilized discussions and debates and discourse, change my mind. You know, they still think they can vote out tyranny. And that is probably even more hilarious than the things that the left does and says. At least you could make a case that these people are, insane or have some form of mental health issues. You can make a very strong case for that. In fact, many have. Between the SSRIs and birth control and all kinds of stuff. At least they have an excuse. What's yours? Besides being complacently complicit, cowardly. Oh man, these people, I don't understand how these people have all this time. I got to go to work and do what? Go to work to provide for your family that's not going to have anything left for them after they're through. You can't even see the big picture. I'm not advocating for violence, of course, but I'm advocating for people to do something. The Revolutionary War was about a fraction of the taxes we pay now. And they openly mock you, man. I mean, in clown world, in the world where, Satan rules, everything is a direct opposition of God. So it's all inverted. They say the No Kings protest because that's what they want. They want to be kings. They say that these people are PDFs and groomers and this and that, and they're projecting because you are. But, when you get caught up in arguing with these people in the comments, one, you're probably arguing with a bot 9 times out of 10, which is equally as dumb. 2, you'll go insane trying to argue with that. People that gaslight, project, emotionally manipulate, move the goalpost, and have been so indoctrinated and brainwashed and programmed that their perception of truth no longer exists. The truth is whatever they feel. And again, it's not like, if only some people had, risked their lives to warn us. If only people have fought and died to fight against this very thing from happening. What we have to remember, and what many of these people seem to forget, is what happens to them if their plan to take over, or whatever their plan is, if their plan is successful. They seem to forget what happens to them. The useful idiots. There's a saying, liberals get the you-know-what too, and it's a saying for a reason. They seem to forget that, or just don't know, because, critical thinking isn't a thing anymore. Reading comprehension. It's not taught anymore. It's basically extinct. Only the people that have it, and it's really more of a curse than a blessing, because ignorance is bliss. I digress. These people, what you have to remember is these people are victims too. The right, I'll just say we. I'm not going to say the right like I'm some fucking libertarian in the middle or whatever, pointing the finger at both sides. What we seem to forget is that these people are victims too. They're so radicalized and brainwashed and indoctrinated and programmed. They actually believe they're the good guys. You know what I mean? Once they place a label on you, it's to dehumanize you. Therefore, you don't have to be treated like a human being, like a person, or a mother, or father, or brother, or sister, or son, daughter. And we tend to do the same things. But we're all a victim of the establishment and their agenda and their weapons of propaganda and everything else they deploy on us. And we seem to forget that. Now, the higher ups, the ones that are spreading all of this, they don't actually believe that. They don't actually believe that these people are Nazis and bigots and all this other stuff. They don't actually believe that, and I'll tell you why. If they did, if these people truly believed that, I guess, Trump is trying to instill some form of dictatorship and takeover and white supremacy and blah, 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 Nazism and fascism, if they truly believed that, why would they be on the internet talking about it? Why would they be in news media interviews talking about it? You know, these politicians and civil servants openly resisting what they call fascism and Nazism and all this other stuff, openly, publicly resisting it and criticizing it, you would never fear for your life. You would have to go into hiding or some witness protection program. I mean, Anne Frank wasn't in her attic hiding for no reason, if you subscribe and believe that bullshit. You know what I mean? Go back and look at, Weimar Germany and, Germany, the Nazi Germany thereafter. People weren't out in public criticizing Hitler and all this other shit and calling people Hitler, because that shit was real. They knew what would happen if they said that. Not only that, how many examples do you need to see that everything that goes on the internet is forever? There's no deleting your posts or text messages for that matter. It just makes it harder to find, but if you know anything about OSINT, you know how to find things. Of course, they would say, oh, that's proof that there is, the Nazis were being targeted and hunted down. Anything but, law and order happening. But if they really believed that, they would be terrified of the consequences of criticizing the establishment and openly resisting the establishment. They'd be terrified to go out and protest. They don't actually believe this shit. It's all about dehumanizing people and, an emotional manipulation. And if you haven't caught on to that by now, if you don't understand that, at this point, I don't know what to tell you. Hopefully somebody in your life that cares about you will take the time to sit you down and explain it to you. But unfortunately, we're far past that point. We're far beyond that point. If your eyes weren't opened during the pandemic, I mean, honestly, they should have been open before that. But if that wasn't confirmation, if your eyes weren't open then, if they weren't open for the Epstein files and what has happened or lack thereof, I mean, we just don't have the time. We're already against the odds. It would take an entire generation to turn things around. It's going to take an entire generation to turn things around. Not to mention people just being willfully ignorant and blind. People sitting on the fence, pointing the finger at both sides because they're cowards, afraid to lose their job, afraid of public perception or being publicly crucified. And I get it. I mean, that's some scary stuff. You can easily have a coordinated cancel campaign targeted at you. But nothing changes if nothing changes. If you're too afraid to miss work, if you're too afraid to lose your job, if you're too afraid to miss out on money to provide for your family, if you're too afraid to sacrifice, there's not going to be anything to sacrifice for. I think it might be a hot take, but I think that's why a lot of people don't want to have kids. It's not because of the world we live in. It's because they don't have to feel bad about not doing anything about it. When I talk to people about having kids, I was at a funeral yesterday and I was talking to some young ladies about having kids and young men. And, the main reason why a lot of people don't want to have kids now is because of the world we live in. And my response is always the same. What do you think is going to change that? More importantly, who? If not you, them. Don't be afraid to have children and have as many as you can and raise them right. They'll do the rest. Now, I do get it. If there's nothing that's going to be done, then all you're doing is raising essentially targets. I mean, take it from me. I'm half black. Do I look it? No. It's probably a shock to a lot of you, but I'm half black. I have kids with a woman that's white. Imagine what my kids look like. They don't look black at all. And I just had a son. So, yeah, I already know what he's going to have to deal with. But I'm not afraid. Neither is he. And he won't be. I mean, there's nothing in this life you should fear but God anyway. But that's, again, yet another topic for another time. Anyways, back to these people claiming, they're being put in death camps and Nazi this and Nazi that. And, they're arresting, they're deporting U.S. citizens. Like, no, they're not. But that's a great idea and they should. I'll tell you why. Before I do understand that is a slippery slope. And that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of power to give somebody to entrust. That's a lot of power to entrust the government, which we don't particularly trust. And honestly shouldn't. They haven't given us any reason to trust them. But I still love this country. I still love America. And we want America to do great. And we want America to survive. And in order to do that, you have to get rid of people like this. You have to get rid of people that hate America. Which begs the question, why are these people fighting so hard to stay in America and change it into something it's not? If America's so racist and this bigoted Nazi white supremacist patriarchy with male toxicity and masculine whatever, if it's all those things, which is the reply you get when you say, make America great again, it's always, when was America great? So these spoiled brat ass little kids that have never even lived a life or done anything in their life yet of any substance, they never have anything good to say about America. And the question is, so then why do you want all these asylum seekers and illegal immigrants and open borders? I mean, we know why, because of these people here, that's their voter base. But the question is, why do they? Of course, they can't answer the question. So then that begs the question, why do you want to stay here? Or why do you believe you should be able to stay here and have the honor of being, or the privilege of being a U.S. citizen? I mean, I would argue a lot of these things that these people are doing is just openly denouncing their U.S. citizenship, which disqualifies you for a lot of jobs and things in life. I don't know. When you scroll through X and you scroll through social media anymore, I mean, of course, it's just one big echo chamber. It's just basically a tool to radicalize you or to, control you, keep you scared or make you scared or depressed, whatever the case may be. But it's very effective too. When you look and when I scroll through here and I see all this crazy ass shit, it's like, what the fuck is going on? And it's by design. Keeping an eye on things is one thing, sure, but keep that in mind when you're scrolling through and seeing all this crazy shit. I mean, as a perfect example, Miss Bailey, meet Bailey Hill Ringer, a first grade teacher at Audubon Elementary School in, where is that? San Diego. Shocker. I don't even know why. This shouldn't even be news, to be honest, but she turned the American flag in her classroom upside down and put up an abolish ICE sign in her classroom to protest ICE. Now, like, we start deporting U.S. citizens like her, the outrage would be astounding. Rightfully so. I think it would scare a lot of people, a lot of libertarians who don't really matter. But I think it would scare a lot of people on the right and the left, to be honest. But I also think it would be very effective. Very effective. But that is not the face. This is not the face of someone who really believes Nazis are real. This is not the face of someone who believes what they would go out into the streets and protest about. She doesn't believe that. Because the implications of doing something like this, I mean, honestly, the implications of treason alone should scare a lot of these people. But when nothing happens, when justice isn't being served, I mean, I understand why they're so, why they're so happy and unafraid of the consequences, because there are none. Not for real anyway. I mean, just like, Melinda here. Yeah, she lost her job and she's internet famous for 15 minutes and she will likely lose her license. Who knows? But even still, all she has to do is start OnlyFans. She can get some lip injections, dye her hair a different color, cosplay, and nobody even recognize her. Hell, she can become a man, change her name, everything. Which, don't get me wrong, you should have the freedom to, you shouldn't be blacklisted for life after something like this. You should definitely never have a job like that in that field ever again. Or, I don't know. I might even say they should be admitted for a psychiatric evaluation, to be honest, but I don't know. It's just now getting back into recording, and this is one of my first videos back, so it's been a lot of rambling and trying to dial in my settings on all my equipment, my mic and everything. So any and all feedback, criticism is welcomed. I'm gonna try to stay on topic, or at least have a topic to pick here in the future. May even do live streams. I don't know. I'm working on setting up a dual PC setup to have better live streams. But if there's any topics or anything you'd like me to discuss, let me know. But for a sneak peek on my next topic, it'll be about this. A little bit about what I was talking about before. This is the tried and true process of destabilizing, demoralizing, ideologically subverting, and overthrowing a nation. So stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in. Praise God. Follow Jesus.